Welcome to the 99, a ministry of Crossroads Grace Community Church in Manteca, California. I'm your host, Heather Mahoney, and at the 99, our goal is to reach our ones far from God by equipping the 99 to follow Jesus more fully. Each week, we take time to lean into the weekend message at Crossroads by expanding further into the topic or concept in greater depth. We hope it challenges you and creates a hunger to dive into Scripture so you can know Jesus better. Welcome to Season 3. Welcome back to Jesus on Trial. This week, we're stepping into two powerful moments in the story of Jesus, the cross and the empty tomb. On Good Thursday, we wrestled with the question, why did Jesus have to die? And on Easter, we asked an equally important one, did he really rise? And why does that even matter? These aren't just theological ideas, they're personal, life-shaping truths. Because if Jesus' death and resurrection are real, then they change everything about how we understand sin, forgiveness, hope, and our future. So today, as the jury, we're required to consider the evidence and decide what we believe. And it has been a great couple of sermons and services.
Whew, boy, it's been intense, hasn't it? Like in a really good way.
So much
That
good.
was awesome.
We don't even know our final baptism numbers yet.
We don't. Stay tuned.
Oh, stay tuned. They were so good. We had Good Thursday.
Yes.
We're not even really talking about sunrise, which was fantastic.
Right. Yeah. Easter is like one of those things. Like, so Christmas is awesome. Like, we got
Yes.
Christmas, and it has its own thing. But then Easter is like, it just seems to build on, and,
Yes.
And there's a lot of reflection that goes with it. But then when the crescendo at the end is just so exciting. And like you said, we had sunrise. We had Preston doing the sunrise service. We had the bridge, which I don't know. Just so much hard work went into that. So
Shout out to Jeff and Sandy Tracer
Jeff and
for
Sandy
building
Tracer, all of our team that just kind of put like the visuals together for it. And Heather, you were in some of those rehearsals where we're like, okay, we got to move it a little bit and do it. But, some may say, well, why put all the effort into that? Well, the effort is to see the people walking up and over that and to be able to know that
To life.
from death to life. It was so cool. So shout out to everybody that was a part of that, our whole team. But most importantly to those that joined us. Thanks for trusting us with your Easter. It was really honored to be there.
Man, it's so cool. And if you missed any of the things we're talking about, with the exception of sunrise, which is outside and just kind of a unique stripped down service and not recorded.
Yeah, on purpose. You got to see there.
Yeah, you got to be here at 6 a.m. next year. Mark your calendars now. But everything else, you can go back to crossroadsgrace.org/services and you could find out your information there. But man, coming off of Easter is always just the coolest. There's so much to talk about. Oof.
Yeah, well, and the good part is he's alive. So the best part is that the best is yet to come, because now we get to see people's lives actually follow him fully, and that's what our whole mission is about.
We do,
discover Jesus, follow him, and then lead somebody to do the very same thing. So.
But unfortunately, today we're going to go back to when
yes, let's do it.
He actually died, so we can talk through the last couple of sermons. So in Mark 14:55 through 59, the religious leaders couldn't get their stories to agree, yet they still pushed for Jesus' death. It reads, the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. They did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, I will destroy this temple made with human hands. In 3 days we'll build another, not made with human hands. Yet even their testimony did not agree. What causes people to ignore or dismiss truth when it's challenged, when they already believe? And can you think of any times that you've seen that happen today or recently?
Yeah. Isn't it funny about that scripture that you just read? As I'm hearing you read that again, like it's just interesting how it says they were looking for evidence. Like they didn't have it. They were having to work for it. Like they were looking for it. And so I in a lot of ways, as I was thinking about this, I think it has a very similar connection to people's habits that they have in their life. So if you just think about how difficult it is for somebody to, I don't know, quit smoking or quit drugs, haven't had to quit either of those. So that's a good thing. But I've heard that it's super, super hard. But you could even do like more similar, like easier examples of driving a different way to work or sleeping on the different side of the bed than you normally do. That's crazy how messed up that'll make you. But, if you eat at a different Mexican restaurant than you normally eat at, just anything that's different, that you have a habitual thing of doing. There's so many examples of in our lives where we have these habits, and we just have do them all the time. And when we're pressed to change them, it's like I don't necessarily know if I want to do that. Now, of course, like in the case of drugs and alcohol, or like eating the wrong things, those are habits that need to be broken because of your health, and you want to live a little bit longer. Your doctor might encourage you and say, "Hey, your statistics are telling us this, and your test results are coming back this." So there's like this sobering reality about your future that if you don't change, but what it really boils down to, though, it still boils down to us wanting to do it and actually doing it. Like it's our decision to make, like you deciding that you want to change and then you making that change. So in the case of the Pharisees, and with Jesus, I think they were so focused on getting rid of him because if you remember back in the message, it was about 2 months or so since the Pharisees had committed themselves, we got to kill this guy. So it's about 2 months until he actually happened, and so they were so focused on getting rid of him, and they believed that he was a false teacher, and they believed this so much that they couldn't see the truth that was right in front of them. And at some point, if you travel so far down that road, you will convince yourself that it has to be true, and it becomes so difficult to even stop because you'd have to turn around, and if you do that, people might not believe you, they might make fun of you, you might lose respect from people. That was a big case in the Pharisees, and in this case it could cost them their life. Like if they decided, you know what, Jesus, you are the Son of God, they'd be on that cross. So but I think it's interesting is that it's very difficult for somebody to change their mind, but I think those are a lot of the reasons why people don't change their mind. It's because of the outside influences on them. But if you look at the Bible, which I think is so cool, there is an example of somebody that did change their mind.
Okay.
And it was Nicodemus in the Bible. Nicodemus, somebody that was part of the religious leading class. He had the same beliefs as the Pharisees. He probably wanted to kill Jesus type of thing, but yet he changed his mind. We read where he came in the middle of the night to be able to ask Jesus some questions because he had some doubt about what these Pharisees were saying, or maybe even what he believed. And so he asked Jesus, and ended up becoming a follower of his, and he started to believe in him. And we know this is true because it was Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea that actually took care of Jesus after he was crucified. So it goes to show that his faith went from this faith in the dark to faith in the light after Jesus had gotten crucified. And probably because he saw him get crucified, and he's like, that it all matches. It's all a belief. So this goes to show you that it is possible to change, but it's going to require us all to humble ourselves and to be willing to admit that we're not perfect, and in fact we're not infallible, and that God is always right and we're not, and no matter what we think. And so it really comes back to this posture of humility, that even though I believe this so strongly, I believe in God more, and whatever He says, I believe to be true. So.
That is so good. I think the willingness for us to realize that our minds can be changed by looking at the truth rather than just shaped by those around us is pretty important for us to focus on that.
Well, and of course we have Satan, who's the father of lies, the opposite of truth, always working against us. But if we can start to realize that, oh, I see your little scheme there, and start to say, okay, let me look at this objectively, I think the truth is easier to find than we make it out to be.
Agreed. Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death. Hebrews 9:22 says forgiveness requires the shedding of blood. How does understanding the seriousness of sin change the way you or we view Jesus' death on the cross? And how can it be more personal when we realize this?
Yeah, well, I love that. That's why we do Good Thursday the way that we do, and we just purposely strip it down. And we had great musicians this year. We have great musicians every week, but I mean, yeah, your family was a big old part of that, like a big chunk of it, which was fun. So, but I think reflecting on Good Friday is so important, or Good Thursday in our regard is so important, because we so quickly want to get to Easter, and we want to jump to that empty tomb. We want that excitement that comes with it. We want the joy. We want all of that. He is risen. He is risen indeed. And I can't blame people for that. Like I'm part of that too. I mean, I'm part of the people that, like, I get super pumped. And if you think about the baptisms and the celebration that went with it, yeah, get me to that. I would love that. But going from death to life is important to remember that Jesus had to sacrifice for us to be able to do that. Like, that was so important. That it's totally worth getting excited for. Frankly, I'm wanting to get that as quickly as we can. But to fully appreciate Easter, you have to reflect on the cross properly. You have to really think about it. It's a lot like athletics, and I know I'm a dumb jock. That's all I think about. But I think it relates to this a little bit. And what I mean is that everybody loves to play in the game when you win the championship. Everybody loves that. But very few people ever stop and consider the amount of hard work that it got to get to that point. Early morning practices, strict diet, getting your homework done at 2 a.m. after your practice ran late the day before, you had to fly back in from a competition, injuries that you overcame, and so many different things. But all of those things feed into the championship that you ultimately you just won. So in a somewhat similar fashion, I think the crucifixion, the death of Jesus, needs to be appreciated for what it is, so that the victory can be completely felt on Easter. And we may not like to admit it, but that our sin is what nailed Jesus to the cross, and we need to reflect on that. But we also need to realize that we have to keep this somber-minded approach to receiving Him as our Savior. We need to have that before we get to Easter, so that we can realize that His life was given for ours, and because He gave up His life, we get to have life. And that's vital, that we not only remember what Jesus did on the cross, but really thank Him for that. So that's why Good Thursday is so important.
Yeah, it really is so important. And I love that you never just say, "Oh, let's end it on an upbeat. Let's end it positive." I mean, we know the end of the story, right? We know that Jesus wins. We know that He rises again. But one of the things I love about communion is the chance to sit back and contemplate. And I feel like this lets us do that for the weekend, to think about what He's done so that we might have life. And then when we come back on Sunday, then we really come back. That's sometimes why even songs are the way they are at Good Thursday. And then they're more celebratory on Sunday, because we're intentionally letting ourselves sit in the sacrifice of Jesus.
Well, and those small little things that people might not catch, but unless you are part of both, like, we ended Good Thursday with this Amazing Grace kind of somber version of it, and then kicked back into the more celebratory version of it on Easter to kind of connect the two, because the sentiments are the same. Like, this is Amazing Grace that we both experienced, but in order for that to be Amazing Grace, there had to have been an amazing death that took place before you can get to the grace of the empty tomb. So,
yeah, I love that. We also are going to move ahead to our Sunday sermon, or Saturday, depending on which day you came for Easter. And so now we're talking about after Jesus has died, but He's been resurrected. And in Luke 24, 1-6, the angels ask, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" And this led me to thinking or wondering, what are some of the biggest dead places, maybe habits, fears, doubts, where people still today are looking for life to receive life from, rather than looking to get that life from Jesus?
Yeah, I don't think our podcast is long enough to really knock out all of those. Probably
you get 5 minutes. Go.
That's it. Yeah. I think what it is, and more interesting maybe to consider, is that the list of things that we try to find life in is not only is it never exhausted, but it's also always evolving. Like, it's always moving. We are constantly creating new things in our life that we believe are going to bring life over Jesus. Like, it's just constantly happening over and over. Whether it's something new in the culture that it events for us to buy, or it's something that we invent in our minds that we believe, oh, okay, why don't I think of that? That's going to bring me more life than Jesus. If we just, like, for a second think about, like, the advent of social media, that alone is pretty profound. It's because today it's hard to imagine. And today, like, a period of time when you weren't able to see people's lives in real time, like this, like, that would be like anathema for us not to know that, because within a second of something happening, the entire world knows it. Within a second.
Oh.
And that could come from world events, like the space shuttle happening, down to the color of shoes that you wear for Easter. People could know instantly all of those things. But there was a time, and Heather, I think we both can agree, there wasn't a time that there was not this instant gratification for this happening. There was a time when you actually had to wait, whether you had to wait for the newspaper to come out the next day, or the book to be written, or the magazine article to come out. There was this delay between what happened and you knowing everything that was taking place. Like, and even then you didn't know everything, because it was always just a little bit behind. But with the advent of social media, all that, whoop, out the window. And now we have instant information, virtually everything at your fingertips. And and I think we both can agree, you're with students all the time, and I've got a couple at home, and even just in my life, I think it creates an unhealthy feeling that we deserve
Very
to
much.
know everything right now. Like it's not a want, it is a need. We have to know. And I deserve to know what my family, my friends are doing, what my government's doing, what the world is doing instantly. But with that, it can bring a great deal of fear and anxiety if we don't know. And that kind of comes back to your question. Like, I think that that's part of what we see. And yet when we look to Jesus, what he is constantly telling us is that we should be patient. We should wait for his timing, not ours. That life isn't about knowing things instantly, but trusting that when is the right time. Is it going to be the time that he tells us? That's when the right time. We're going to know exactly what we should know, exactly when he wants us to tell us. And virtually everything that Jesus said was trying to break us of this cultural norm. And instead of like resting in our belief, we believe that he is right on his time every time. And so I think those are just some of those things. Like, we are in such the dead places are, I think, in this instant gratification society that we're living in, that we're looking at. I want to know what I want to know right now. And we just don't have the patience to look at Christ, because in him is this wonderful world of sanctification where it's a slow process of getting to know him more, and that his life is a delayed release instead of an instant release. And for us, I think that becomes difficult, but it's vital that we just trust Jesus more than we trust ourselves.
I think that's what it boils down to.
I think so too.
It's vital that we just trust Jesus more than we trust ourselves. You're so right about social media, and I think with that comes all the things we haven't talked about, all the filters, all the fakeness, all of the
true.
like. Even who are the guys that I want to say Ed Applegate's sons love? They do all the trick shots. Is it
Dude Perfect? Oh yeah, I love Dude Perfect.
But like, how many times did they try even to do this cool trick shot? We're seeing maybe the last 4 or 5 times that they tried, in some probably 10 times sped up video, till they get to the actual time, right? Or for someone who's an actress, and then you think, that's what I want to be when I grow up, and you didn't see 13 years of waiting tables and working at coffee shops in 2 different places. And you know what I mean? And there's 8 people that have no business sharing that size of an apartment because they're living in a city because they need to be around. So regardless of what it is, whether you got big dreams from social media, or even earlier you talked about being an athlete, it is, man, it's about sticking it out, and you're not going to find anything instant. Because one thing that was sticking out in my mind when you talked about winning the championship is then when your team keeps going on, you watch all the other teams around you who aren't making it get to have some normalcy. They get to stop going full throttle. They get to go home with their spouses or their family. They get to rest. They get to have a nap. They get to have a reprieves from these, 6 a.m. workouts and all this stuff. And not if you want to win it, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't get the full experience of what it looks like to, win and be a champion if you're not all in. And so it's just so much more than something happening in a snap of a finger.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
But it's easy for things to look a certain way when they're not, which really leads me to this question is, why is it important that Jesus actually died and didn't just look like he died? Like, how does him actually dying strengthen the case for the resurrection?
Yeah, if you just put it in really simple terms, I think you have to realize that if something doesn't die, it doesn't need to resurrect.
Good point.
So if Jesus never died, then the resurrection is just kind of this big hoax. I mean, Paul told us, and we'll actually think we'll look at it in a couple minutes here, but Paul told us that if the resurrection didn't happen, then Christianity is completely false. It crumbles under the weight of its own assertions, actually. That our faith is built on the belief that a dead man came back to life, and that man was Jesus, and that man was the Son of God. And so if Jesus either faked his death or he's still dead in the ground somewhere, so is our faith. But it's critical that Jesus died not only for the proof of Christianity, but more importantly, to satisfy the demand that sin required for death for atonement. So nothing in the world is free. We've heard this before, right? Nothing in the world is free. We hear it all over the place. It's this idea that everything comes at a cost no matter what. And this is certainly true about Jesus and our sin. If it wasn't for him, he didn't wave his hand and say, oh, it's all good, don't worry about it. No, he actually followed through with the rule that he in fact created for the payment punishment for the wages of sin, and that was death. And so his perfect life and his perfect death was and ultimately his resurrection, and that was what satisfied the requirements for our life, for us to receive life. So we must have death so we can have a resurrection, so that we can have a life that he promised us. That's why it's so important.
That is actually why it's so important. If we're not looking at it with that frame, if we're not looking at the death to life, then we miss it, because if he died and stayed dead, then it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't mean anything for us. And the resurrection only happens when, I think you said it simply at the beginning. Did you say, well, there's no point in resurrecting if you didn't die? But it also just makes me think of everything that was foretold that was going to happen, how Jesus was going to come, how he was preparing the way. And then we get to have God with us for the first time ever, which is pretty insane when you think about it. But if we look back at Matthew 20, chapter 27, it talks about the tomb, how it was sealed, and how the tomb was guarded.
Yeah.
So keeping in line with the conversation about Jesus dying, what does this detail tell us about how seriously people took Jesus's claim to rise again? How does it challenge that idea if somebody is claiming that resurrection was fake, it didn't happen?
Yeah. One thing we just don't really grasp well is the power and the influence that Rome had during the time of Jesus. And because Rome was powerful, and also it was very good at nearly everything that it did. So you can see that. You may not like it, the way that they had their taxation policies fixed at the time, but I'll tell you what, it was effective in creating a massive empire that they had acquired. We could be frustrated about the brutality, like of the way that they fought war, or maybe the way that they punished the guilty. But again, it was very effective in accomplishing this dominance that they wanted to have. But we also can't forget about their ingenuity. I mean, Roman roads. I mean, the roads that we're driving on today, they were inspired by the roads that were created by Rome. So when we see that there was like a Roman seal placed on this tomb, that marked that this was something, not just something, this was something that Rome itself was involved with, it was aware of, and it actually cared about. And to have that seal broken would have meant that whoever did it, they were going to feel the wrath of Rome. They were going to feel this certain death. I mean, just Jesus died a Roman death and a crucifixion, so you're going to break a Roman rule, you're probably going to have the same weight of justice fall on you. So what's interesting about that text that we read is that the Jewish leaders, if when you read Matthew, the Jewish leaders never asked for that seal to be placed on the tomb. Like they didn't say, hey, you need to do this. They just said, you should probably guard this and be aware of it. But Rome, they took it an extra step, and they wanted to make sure this thing was taken care of. And now I'm not sure if they were just sick of the Jews bugging them. That could have been it, or about this Jesus guy. And they just kind of wanted this whole thing off their hands and off their books. It was enough already. Maybe that guard that when Jesus died, we read that wonderful part in the scriptures where when Jesus died, he looks up and he says, truly this man was the Son of God. Like maybe he influenced some people, and maybe there's an increased intensity in the situation. I certainly don't have 100% know that that's true, but it's possible. But regardless, this Roman seal on the tomb meant that whatever was behind there was important enough for the full attention of Rome to have it. Which is crazy to think about, that when you consider that Jesus was a no-name, homeless, peasant, carpenter from a no-name town of Nazareth. Even one of his disciples says, what good comes from Nazareth? And now his body, this no-name, homeless peasant, all that guy's body is now being protected by the full authority of a Roman guard, which would have been anywhere from 4 to 16 men, depending on how you read it, had the seal of Rome on it, and now has the full authority of the most powerful army in the world behind that. I just think that's pretty cool. Like, you got to really, really consider that. And so what that tells me is that Rome doesn't do that if they don't think that what that is powerful, or worthy of their attention. So for me, that just goes that much further to believe that Jesus had influenced society so much that there was something so powerful about him. He wasn't just a good teacher, wasn't just a good man. He was the Son of God, and that Rome wanted to make sure that there was that they were covering all their bases to try to prevent whatever was on the other side from leaking out. But as we know, it did, and it changed the world.
It did. Yeah, when you think about that, with 10 I don't know, 14, 16, whatever you said,
Yeah, yeah.
guards, the sill, all of that. And
Yeah.
for that not to be broken, and for women to come weep to,
Yes.
mourn it and just be like, what in the world? And
Yeah.
it's one thing to know when we know in our heads and our hearts that our Savior is going to come through.
Yeah.
And then it's funny how sometimes it's still shocking to us when he does exactly what he says he's going to do. And we're like, oh my gosh, he provided.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Over and over.
Almost
and
like
over.
it was the plan. In 1 Corinthians 15, 13 through 20, it says, if there's no resurrection of the dead, then not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. More than that, we are then found to be false witnesses about God, who have testified about God that he raised Christ from the dead, but he did not raise him if in fact the dead are not raised. For if the dead are not raised, then Christ has not been raised either. And if Christ has not been raised, then your faith is futile. You're still in your sins. And for those who have fallen asleep in Christ are lost. If only for this life we have hope in Christ, we are of all people most to be pitied. But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. So the Apostle Paul here says that if Jesus didn't rise, then our faith is useless.
Yeah.
Why do you think the resurrection is so make or break when it comes to Christianity?
Well, we kind of talked about it a second ago because it's really the hinge point of our faith. But without it, the entire thing collapses under its own assumptions. But I do think what's interesting is, like, you could consider non-Christian historians.
Okay.
You have Josephus and people that they can attest the fact that this event really did happen. Like, this actually took place, and that this is, or at least this is the reaction that multiple people had when they saw that Jesus was alive. But I kind of come back, if we think about Paul for just a moment, we brush past his words so quickly, and we love them, obviously, but the amount of convincing it took for this man to get to that point that he just said what he said can't be understated. I mean, Paul was a guy, we talked about a couple weeks ago, he literally killed Christians. He could have cared less about people that followed Christ because they thought they were blasphemous. And so he would attest to their murders, and he would go and get them arrested. And he was the Jew of all Jews, and he was on the fast track to becoming the head of the Sanhedrin. He had everything. So for him to come to the place that he says, but Christ indeed had been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those that have fallen asleep. He had to believe that full-heartedly, and he had to have an interaction with the risen Savior. So that moment that he had on that road to Damascus, when he was going to get more people killed, and Jesus gets a hold of him and has that moment, like, that was a real moment, because it radically transformed somebody that never should have been transformed. And so the resurrection is true because it truly resurrected people from the death. Like, and so what I love about that is that resurrection is not just that the Bible tells me so kind of thing. It's got historical nature to it. And then there's this next layer of belief, is that not only did the people think that it happened, but they believe that they attach their faith in God to it. So it was either a magic trick, or this was an act of God, what he said was going to happen. And yet Christianity stands alone from every other world religion, that their leader, our Jesus, he's the only one that came back that defeated death. He's the only one that did that. All the other leaders of all these other world religions, you can go to that. You worship their tombs. If you're in Islam, you go to these places where you think that they were at. They are all dead. They have not resurrected, but Jesus is the only one that actually is resurrected from the dead, and then proved it physically to other people for it to be. For it to be irrefutable that it actually took place. So much so that non-Christians looked at it and said, yep, that happened. So I just think that's really powerful. And again, for Paul to believe that, it goes even that much further for me to say, dang, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and because Jesus went through an actual physical resurrection, now our hearts can be resurrected, our souls can be resurrected. And it's Easter week, so all these songs keep going through my head, but one of them is My Testimony, where it says, this is my testimony from death to life.
Yeah.
And talking about grace rewriting our story. And I know you shared John 5:24, and that says that whoever believes in Jesus has crossed over from death to life.
Yeah.
And just a follow-up question to that is, what does it practically look like to live as you've crossed from death
Yeah.
to life? Like, what should be different about someone who truly believes, and whether they like walked this weekend over the bridge, death to life, or they
Yeah.
walked it 50 years ago?
Yeah. Well, and you just said it, like that was the whole crux of that bridge, is that there is a death side and a life side. There is a side that without Jesus, you will experience eternity without him. But if you have him, you experience life to the fullest. But I think it's interesting for a couple of reasons, because
Okay.
you could argue that there's lots of people that you might see in our world that appear to be on the side of life. They might look like they've got it all together. They got a great life. They have a happy family. They might have loads of money, but that's a life that's void of any depth or meaning, actually. And we see this all the time in professional athletes. They have virtually everything you could ever want, or actresses or actors, but yet they still are missing something. And that's why they're always trying to chase after something new, something different, so they get this next feeling. And a perfect example is Tiger Woods. Like, he's in the news again this past week or so. If you haven't caught it, like normally Tiger he should be in the news for winning golf tournaments, but this time he's back in the news for his addictions that have come to haunt him yet again. He flipped his car again, an apparent like drug or alcohol induced intoxication thing that happened, and this is a man who arguably is one of the most famous people in the world, not just for golf, but he's a cultural icon, has more money than he would ever need, but yet he's still chasing after something. And he's a very vocal Buddhist in his belief system. And so that belief system, there truly is no hope in that belief system, because your entire way to find happiness is based on going deeper and deeper within yourself. And that's a lonely place. I don't want to go deeper into myself, because that's dark, right? So we want something different. And so what Tiger's missing, what the world is missing, is that you'll always, if you're trying to go inside yourself, you'll find darkness. But until you find Jesus, it's only when you find him that you'll find life. So as a Christian that is truly following Jesus, there's something profound that happens in your life, okay? So this is the difference. Like, you have the people that look like they're following, and then the people that actually are. And so it's going to be some difference. And the way that you see that you've crossed from death to life, is that there's the fruit of the Spirit of God in your life. That you have peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. It's just pouring out of you, that those things just pour out of your life. And it's literal fruit that somebody can actually see that you are completely sold out to Jesus. Dead things don't grow anything. They just don't. In fact, they destroy everything around them. But when something is living, there's something growing out of them. It could be a flower, it could be a fruit, whatever it may be physically. But in our lives, God says, if you want to see if you really have crossed over from death to life, then you should see some fruit. There should be the fruit of the Spirit should be seen in your life. And I think that's the best way for you to see if somebody's life is transformed, is what's coming out of that life that is now following Jesus.
Okay, I don't know gardening well, and I don't know fruits and all that well, but I'm thinking of the bulbs that get planted that bloom at certain times of year, and then they kind of go dormant. And it was just making me think about, hey, if you've been in a season of a drought, you don't have to live there forever, right? Sometimes there's different seasons that are coming, and so be encouraged, like, get yourself rooted in the Word, get back to what's going to fuel you and actually give you life.
Well, it's all of our Dutch people right now are just shouting from the roof, "That's the tulip," right? Because that's the tulip. They slowly, right, and around Easter is when they come, or those Easter lilies when those start coming around. But
it is Easter lily time.
It is, yeah. But you're right. Like some people might be listening to this and say, "Man, I'm going through a hard time right now, and like life isn't easy, and I don't know if there's a lot of fruit coming out. In fact, I don't know if I would want to eat any of that fruit." So I think I would just say, number one, be mindful of what you are producing. And if you don't like what you're producing, then you need to change some things in your life that's producing it. But also, you might have to realize that there might be a delayed reaction to that maybe there's some stuff happening under the ground that God is working on that is going to happen later, but you just need to be patient and continue to trust. And where I see most people miss out on that blessing is when they jump too quickly and they're like, "Well, God, forget this. I don't see what I want right now, so I'm just going to wait. I can't wait any longer. I'm just going to do my own thing." But the patience that comes with like waiting for the delayed gratification of the Lord is so powerful, and I think proves even more that you're on the side of life too.
Agreed. The reality is the cross and the resurrection aren't just events to remember, they're invitations to respond to. The cross shows us the depth of our need and the extent of Jesus' love. The empty tomb shows us that death doesn't get the final word. Jesus does. So the question really isn't what happened. It's what will you do with what happened? Will you trust him? Will you believe him? Will you follow him? Because if Jesus did die, and he did rise again, then he's not just someone to admire. He's someone to surrender your entire life to.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Well, thank you guys for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us for Jesus on Trial. Good news. This is just the end of this series, but we start a new one next week.
Yeah, here we come. Joshua is going to be an amazing journey. Do not miss this. Do not miss a week of this. It's going to be an awesome time of looking at what it looks like to be proven and what it means to be proven in the eyes of God. Joshua, great story and lots to get through, but you're not going to want to miss it. And a great chance to invite your friend. If you're brand new, coming back from Easter, join us again. Invite a friend. Again, you won't want to miss it.
You won't want to miss it. Thanks for joining us today, and tag, you're it. Thank you for joining us today on the 99 podcast for season 3. We hope to see you next weekend at Crossroads, on campus or online for one of our 4 weekend services. To view our service times, be sure to check out our website at crossroadsgrace.org. Tag, you're it.